Today's story is called A Child Learning to Ride a Bike Near Mr. Ellis's Home. Welcome to Warm Life Stories, a quiet little corner where we slow down, breathe a little easier, and share gentle stories about ordinary people living ordinary days that somehow still touch the heart. If you enjoy quiet stories like this, feel free to subscribe or share your thoughts in the comments. We always love reading them. Now, if you're ready, let's settle in and gently step into today's story. The morning settled softly over the quiet street, the kind of morning that didn't rush anyone. Light drifted through the maple branches above, scattering small shapes across the pavement like pieces of quiet memory. A faint breeze carried the smell of damp earth, still holding the last touch of night. On the porch of an old wooden house, the one with chipped railings and a pair of chairs that had seen decades of sun, Mr. Ellis sat in his usual place. He didn't lean forward or lean back. He simply rested, as though the porch itself had shaped a space just for him. The soft warmth of the mug in his hands seeped into his palms. It was Maggie's old mug, the one with a crack near the handle, small enough not to matter, but enough to remind him of time's gentle wear on the things we love. He lifted it slowly, letting the rising steam brush his face. Mornings were quieter for him these days, but the quiet wasn't empty. It felt lived in, like a familiar melody humming beneath everything. Toby, the small gray cat who claimed no home but his porch, curled into a loose circle near his feet. Every so often, its whiskers twitched, catching dreams only cats could understand. Somewhere down the street, a bird called out a single, high note that floated into the open air before settling into the stillness again. Mr. Ellis listened, not because he needed sound, but because it reminded him he wasn't alone. Even the quiet had company if you paid attention closely enough. He let his eyes wander to the edge of the yard, where sunlight had begun to touch the grass with a soft, golden sweep. That small shimmer always arrived the same way, slow, steady, patient. The kind of patience a man grows into after 7 decades of living. He breathed in, held the breath for a moment, then let it go. The day didn't ask anything of him yet. It simply offered itself. A gentle movement stirred at the corner of his vision, nothing sudden, just a small shift in the rhythm of the morning. A faint metallic rattle, a tiny wobble like something unsteady finding its courage. He didn't turn right away. He let the sound come to him, the way he let most things come these days. A child's laugh, brief, breathy, uncertain, drifted through the stillness, followed by the soft scrape of rubber on pavement. Something in that sound tugged at him, not sharply, but with the gentleness of an old memory tapping on a half-open door. He lowered his mug ever so slightly. The street remained calm, the breeze slow, the light warm on his hands, but something new had found its way into the morning. Something small, something almost tender. He wasn't sure what it was yet, but he felt it, the way you feel a moment that's about to mean something, even before you know why. So he waited, quietly, patiently, letting the morning unfold at its own soft pace. The sound returned again, soft, unsteady, and almost hopeful. This time, Mr. Ellis lifted his gaze from the rim of his mug. At the edge of the street, just past the maple tree whose branches he'd trimmed every spring, he noticed a small figure wobbling along the sidewalk. A child, maybe 7, maybe 8, was perched on a bright blue bicycle. The bike looked new, the kind that still carried the shine of a birthday morning. The boy's knees were stiff, elbows tucked too tightly, as though he believed holding perfectly still would somehow help him balance. Each small push of the pedals sent him drifting slightly off course, like a leaf trying to remember how to ride the wind. A woman, likely his mother, walked closely behind him. She didn't touch the bike, not yet. Her hands hovered in the air, ready but not interfering. She wore the kind of smile parents keep for moments like this, gentle, encouraging, brave in its own way. Every few feet, she offered a quiet word he couldn't make out, but he could hear the warmth in it. Mr. Ellis watched with the stillness of someone who'd spent decades learning how to be present without pressing in. He didn't lean forward. He didn't call out. He simply let the moment arrive like a soft breeze drifting toward his porch. Toby lifted its head briefly at the sound of the bicycle tires, then settled again. deciding it wasn't worth the effort to investigate. The child's face tightened in concentration. His brows pinched together, not in frustration yet, but in that early, uncertain stage where hope and doubt share the same space. The front wheel shimmered in the sunlight, wobbling left, then right, as though unsure of the path it wanted to take. Mr. Ellis felt a small tug in his chest, the familiar kind he always felt when he saw someone learning something for the first time. He had lived long enough to know that first tries were rarely graceful, but they were always worth watching. He took a slow sip from his mug, letting the taste settle across his tongue. The warmth was thin now, but comforting. Everything about the scene felt strangely familiar. The brightness of the bicycle, the hopeful tension in the boy's shoulders, the mother's steady presence. Small pieces of an old memory edged close, but did not fully surface. Not yet. Steady. You're okay. Keep going, he heard the mother say at last. Her voice was soft, as if she didn't want to disturb the quiet morning more than necessary. The boy pushed forward again, this time glancing briefly at his mother for reassurance. His wheels skidded slightly over a patch of uneven pavement, and the quick jolt sent a flicker of fear across his face. His foot shot down to the ground to catch himself. The bike wobbled. Paused. Stopped. He didn't fall, but he looked like he might cry from the simple overwhelm of trying. The mother knelt beside him, adjusting the handlebars, brushing dirt from his palm even though he hadn't really scraped anything. It was the gesture, not the injury, that mattered. From the porch, Mr. Ellis couldn't help but smile softly, the way one smiles at something tender that doesn't belong to them but somehow still touches them. He set his mug down on the small wooden table beside him. The porch creaked slightly under the shift of his weight. He didn't stand, he didn't speak, he simply watched, letting the quiet wrap around him again. Names didn't matter yet. He didn't know who the boy was or when the family had moved in. But something about the moment felt close, familiar, almost personal, though he couldn't quite place why. Sometimes, he thought, you don't need to know someone to feel connected to the small, brave things they're trying to do. The boy took a breath, gripping the handlebars with new determination. The mother gave a nod, gentle, patient. And from his porch seat, Mr. Ellis felt the morning settle even more deeply around him, as though inviting him to keep watching, to stay with this unfolding moment just a little longer. As the boy steadied himself for another attempt, something in the way he gripped the handlebars, the tiny shake in his fingers, the determined set of his jaw caught hold of a quiet place inside Mr. Ellis. It was subtle, just the faintest shift in his chest, like a door nudging open on its own. He didn't search for the memory. It came to him the way soft light drifts across a room without asking permission. For a moment, the porch around him faded, replaced by the brightness of a long-ago afternoon. He saw himself younger, much younger, running alongside another wobbling bicycle. Maggie was on it, laughing even as she fought to keep the front wheel straight. Her hair had flown behind her in a loose, golden sweep, catching sunlight the way certain people catch joy without trying. She wasn't good at balancing. She'd admitted that right away. "I'm too stiff," she'd said, clutching the handlebars like they were the last stable thing on earth. "And you're not helping," she added through a breathless laugh. "You're running crooked." He remembered how he had bent over, laughing so hard his stomach hurt, how she had laughed too, even while careening dangerously close to a row of hedges. It wasn't graceful, but it was theirs, messy and bright, and full of that young kind of hope that doesn't know yet what it will lose, or what it will someday hold on to. The memory softened, blurring at the edges like an old photograph touched too many times. It slipped away for a moment, replaced by another, this one quieter. A small backyard. Their daughter, Emily, no more than 6 at the time, gripping her own little bike with streaming ribbons on the handles. She had been scared not of falling, but of disappointing them. He remembered kneeling beside her, placing his hand over her tiny one. "You don't have to look perfect," he had told her. "You just have to look ahead." It was the kind of line he hadn't realized would stay with him. But years later, he sometimes caught himself whispering those words into an empty room. The warmth of those memories lingered, but so did something else, a soft ache, The kind that doesn't hurt so much as remind you that love leaves echoes. He blinked gently, letting the present settle back into view. The porch, the maple tree, Toby curled at his feet. Across the street, the boy repositioned himself on the seat. His mother brushed dust from his pant leg even though none was there. The tenderness of the gesture tightened that warm ache inside Mr. Ellis, not painfully, but in recognition. He thought of how time folds moments together, how a child's wobbling bicycle could sit right beside a memory from 40 years ago without either one losing its shape. Another memory drifted through soft, almost shy. He was in a hardware store, years before retirement. A young father had come in, asking for training wheels. Not the sturdy kind, just something inexpensive, something temporary. They won't need them long, the man had said with hope that bordered on worry. Mr. Ellis had helped him find the right pair, tightening the bolts himself. Kids usually ride straighter when someone believes they can, he had offered, almost without thinking. The father had nodded slowly, as though he needed that sentence more than the item he bought. Back on the sidewalk, the boy's foot tapped anxiously against the pavement. His mother murmured something encouraging. The sound carried faintly through the morning air, mixing with the rustling leaves overhead. Mr. Ellis felt his heart shift again softly, like a curtain stirring when a window is opened. Not sadness, not exactly longing, something gentler than either. He wrapped his hands around his mug once more, though the warmth had nearly faded. Memories settled inside him, layer upon layer, bright, cracked, tender, lived in. They didn't hurt, they didn't weigh him down. They simply reminded him of who he had been, and of the quiet, generous world he had once helped build, one small moment at a time. And as the boy prepared for another try, Mr. Ellis found himself leaning just slightly forward, not intruding, just present. The past had come close enough to touch, and now, the morning seemed ready to offer something new in return. The boy adjusted his grip again, lifting his chin with a kind of bravery that only children possess, the kind that is fragile and bold at the same time. His mother stepped back half a pace, giving him room, though her hands hovered in the air as if they were wired to his movements. He pushed down on the pedals, and the bike jerked forward. For a second, it seemed as though momentum had betrayed him, but then the wheels straightened, catching the morning light in a thin, bright line. The boy's legs pumped, unsure but willing. Each turn of the pedals carried him a little farther from where he began, and a little closer to something he didn't yet know he could reach. From the porch, Mr. Ellis followed the slow progress with the attentiveness of someone who understood how delicate new courage can be. He noticed the tiny flutters in the boy's shoulders, the way his breath puffed out in uneven bursts. He noticed the mother's steps, small, cautious, but full of hope. The bicycle rolled several yards before wobbling again. The boy's eyes widened, and instinctively he reached for balance where none existed. His foot hit the ground hard, skidding slightly. The bike tilted, rattled, then came to a shaky stop. No fall, just another try that hadn't gone far enough. The boy's lower lip trembled. He turned toward his mother with the quiet plea of someone who isn't sure whether to keep trying or give in. She crouched down, tucking a loose strand of hair behind his ear. "You're doing just fine," she whispered. "You're closer than you think." Her voice held a softness that pressed gently into the morning air. But the boy didn't answer. His shoulders sagged a little, his hands loosening their grip. He looked down at his shoes, scuffing the pavement with the tip of one toe. From the porch, something in Mr. Ellis shifted. It wasn't dramatic, just a small, warm stirring, the kind that comes when a memory aligns with the present in a way that feels almost intentional. He picked up his mug, though he didn't drink from it. He hesitated. He didn't want to intrude. But kindness, when it rises, rarely asks for permission. So he stood slowly, mindful of the stiffness in his knees, and stepped down from the porch. Toby lifted its head in mild surprise before curling back into its circle. Mr. Ellis walked only a few steps, stopping at the edge of his yard. He didn't get close enough to startle, just enough that his voice could carry on the breeze. "You know," he said, his tone warm and measured, "most folks don't get it right the first time." The boy looked up. His eyes were bright with frustration and something more tender beneath it. Mr. Ellis offered a small smile, not wide, not forceful, just enough to be felt. When I was about your age, he continued, I tipped over so many times I thought the ground had my name on it. The boy blinked, the corner of his mouth lifting a little despite himself. What helped, Mr. Ellis went on, tapping the air with one finger, was looking ahead, not down. You go where your eyes go. The mother glanced at him with a grateful, gentle nod, the kind of thank you that didn't need words. The boy straightened on the seat, turning his gaze forward, not at his shoes. He gripped the handlebars again. This time, his breath steadied, his shoulders lowered, his feet found the pedals with new intention. When he pushed off, the movement was smoother, not confident, but hopeful. The wheels rolled, clattering softly over the pavement. The wobble was still there, but it wasn't wild. It was simply part of the learning. And as the boy drifted forward, carried by his own effort, Mr. Ellis felt something gentle settle inside his chest, like a warm note played softly on an old radio. A small moment, a small change. But sometimes, the heart needs nothing more. The boy's progress carried him a few more feet before the bike veered slightly to the right. His foot shot out again, skimming the pavement, bringing him to a shaky stop. He didn't fall, he was past that part now, but he looked down with a sigh so quiet it nearly dissolved into the morning air. His mother approached, not with urgency but with that patient warmth of someone who knows growth cannot be rushed. She rested a hand lightly on his shoulder, letting him breathe, letting the moment settle. Mr. Ellis stood a few yards away, his hands tucked into the pockets of his soft, worn sweater. He didn't speak again. He had said what needed saying, and sometimes silence is the best kind of encouragement. When the boy lifted his foot to move the bike back into position, the front wheel turned just enough to catch the light, and that's when Mr. Ellis noticed something small tucked behind the handlebars. A thin ribbon of yellow tape. Not bright, not new, just a gently faded strip tied in a loose knot. It fluttered whenever the bike wobbled, like a tiny flag cheering for progress no one else could see. The boy saw Mr. Ellis's eyes drift to it, and instinctively touched the ribbon. His fingers hovered over it with a tenderness that didn't match his age. My dad tied it there, he said softly, not looking up. He said it would help me remember which way to keep straight. The mother's expression shifted, a mix of fondness and something wistful, the way someone's face changes when a memory steps quietly beside them. He taught him last summer, she added, her voice gentle, before he had to leave for work out of state. Not a tragedy, not a wound, just a small distance in a world full of small distances. Mr. Ellis nodded, the softness in his eyes deepening. He had known many kinds of absence in his life, some permanent, some temporary, all tender in their own way. That's a good ribbon, he said. Holds more than you think. The boy rubbed the knot with his thumb, and for a moment, something in his shoulders loosened, as if remembering the ribbon was the same as remembering he wasn't really doing this alone. He climbed back onto the seat, his small hands steadying themselves on the grips. The ribbon fluttered again, catching a small breeze that seemed to rise just for him. Before he started pedaling, he looked at Mr. Ellis. Can you watch again? It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a question, really. It was the kind of request children make, only when they feel safe. Mr. Ellis smiled, one of those quiet smiles that appears more in the eyes than the mouth. I'm right here, he said. The boy nodded, a tiny but brave acknowledgement, and pushed forward. This time, the bike moved with a different rhythm, not smoother, necessarily, but more certain, as if the boy wasn't just trying to balance his body, but also the small hopes tied into that faded ribbon. He drifted down the sidewalk, the wheels humming their uncertain melody, and each time the sunlight hit the ribbon, it glowed just a little, like a reminder or a promise, something gentle, something steady. And then came the reveal, small, quiet, almost easy to miss. The boy wasn't watching his feet anymore. He was looking ahead. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. His back straightened, his breath evened out. His hands relaxed on the handlebars, and for a few steps, 3, maybe 4, he rode without hesitation, carried not by perfect balance but by a moment of belief. His mother lifted a hand to her mouth, holding back a sound that might have startled him. Mr. Ellis felt something kindle warmly in his chest, not triumph, not pride, but a gentle, old feeling he hadn't visited in a while. The quiet joy of seeing someone take a small step forward. Sometimes, he thought, the world doesn't change in grand ways. Sometimes it changes in the moment a child finally looks up. For a brief and shining moment, the boy kept moving forward, steady, focused, carried by the sudden confidence of looking ahead rather than down. His mother took a small step forward as if pulled by the sight, but she didn't touch him, didn't call out. Some moments grow best when left undisturbed. The sunlight shifted across the sidewalk, warm and soft, wrapping the boy in a quiet glow. And then, slowly, the inevitable wobble returned. His front wheel trembled, catching on a crack in the pavement. His shoulders tensed, his breath hitched. But this time, he didn't stop. He lifted his foot just an inch, considering putting it down, then hesitated. His eyes flicked to the faded yellow ribbon fluttering near the handlebars. Something about that small strip of color steadied him, maybe a memory, maybe a promise, maybe just the thought of someone who believed he could do this. He pushed forward again. Not smoothly, not perfectly, but bravely. Mr. Ellis felt his chest warm in a way he hadn't expected. Something gentle uncurled beneath his ribs, waking slowly, like sunlight returning to a room long in shadow. The sensation wasn't dramatic. It didn't rush in. It simply rose, quiet and steady, wrapping itself around his heartbeat. The boy managed another stretch of sidewalk longer this time. His legs pumped with newfound certainty, as if they had finally learned the rhythm the morning had been trying to teach him. His mother pressed her hand to her heart, a soft gasp slipping out despite her effort to stay silent. Then came the moment that would stay with all three of them. The boy glanced sideways, not down, not behind, but toward Mr. Ellis, as if to check whether he was still watching, as if that simple act of being seen was the thing giving him courage. And in that glance, something shifted inside the older man. A warmth, unexpected and fragile, bloomed in his chest. Not because the boy was succeeding, but because he had wanted to. It struck him with a gentleness that made his eyes soften. How rare it was, at his age, to witness something new growing right in front of him, and how even rarer it was to feel needed in a way that asked nothing and offered everything. The boy straightened his back, widened his eyes, and took one clean, perfect glide across the sunlit concrete. It lasted only a second or two, but it was enough. Enough to make his mother clap a hand over her mouth. Enough to make Mr. Ellis inhale quietly, holding the breath without realizing he had done so. Enough to feel like a tiny miracle dressed in ordinary clothing. Finally, the boy slowed, letting his foot drop to the ground. He didn't stumble. He didn't fall. He came to a natural, graceful stop. The kind of stop that happens only when someone has finally felt what balance truly means. He turned toward the porch, chest rising and falling, cheeks flushed with the thrill of almost flying. "Did you see that?" he called out, breathless. Mr. Ellis nodded, a soft smile easing into the lines of his face. "I did," he said. "Every bit of it." The boy grinned wide, bright, and so full of life that it made something inside the older man stretch open, like a door that had been closed a little too long. And for a moment, a small, tender moment, Mr. Ellis felt a surprising sting behind his eyes. Not sadness, not longing, something lighter, something grateful. He blinked it away with the subtle dignity of someone who has lived long enough to let emotion visit without shame. A breeze lifted the hem of his sweater. The ribbon on the bike fluttered in response, the two movements folding into each other like a quiet conversation. The boy had found his balance. And in a way he hadn't expected, Mr. Ellis had found something too. A soft, renewing feeling that he didn't quite have a name for yet, but one that made the morning feel a little fuller, a little kinder, a little more alive. The boy coasted back toward his mother, cheeks flushed with triumph, his small chest rising and falling as if the world had suddenly expanded around him. She knelt to catch him in a loose, relieved hug, not tight enough to break his excitement, just enough to frame it with a mother's gentle pride. "You did it," she whispered into his hair. "Honey, you really did it." He laughed, a bright, breathless sound that carried across the street like something meant to reach anyone willing to listen. It brushed against the porch, warmed the space around Mr. Ellis, and curled softly in the quiet places of his heart. Toby stretched beneath the porch rail, as if even the cat sensed the lightness blooming in the air. For a moment, the morning felt suspended, held delicately between effort and accomplishment, between uncertainty and the shape of something new. Then the moment eased, relaxing back into the familiar rhythm of the day. The boy lifted the bike upright again and turned it toward his mother. "I want to try riding back," he said, energized now, the way children become when they've tasted a victory that once seemed impossible. His mother nodded. "Go ahead, I'm right here." "Iviway," she stepped aside, giving him room, and this time, when his feet found the pedals, he didn't hesitate, not even for a heartbeat. He pushed forward, wobbling only slightly before finding that thin thread of balance again. He moved past the maple tree, past the mailbox, past the spot where the pavement dipped just a little. The ribbon fluttered steadily, almost proudly. The sunlight painted long strokes across the road, as if clearing a path just for him. Mr. Ellis watched the boy glide by, and an unexpected smile settled onto his face. A quiet, settled smile, the kind that came from somewhere deeper than delight. It wasn't about the boy's success. It was about the gentle reminder that even in the later chapters of life, there were still firsts to witness. Still small wonders blooming in ordinary places. He returned to the porch steps and eased himself back onto his usual seat. The wood creaked under him, familiar and forgiving. His mug sat where he had left it, the last sip long cooled, the faint ring of steam gone. But somehow, it felt right, like the morning had given him something warmer than the drink ever could. Across the street, the boy circled back toward his mother with more confidence this time, lifting one hand from the handlebars for a single, daring second. She laughed, half startled, half thrilled. "Okay, don't get too brave yet," she said, though her voice was filled with joy. The boy slowed to a stop, steady and sure now. His mother took the bicycle gently, checking the wheels, brushing off imaginary dust, fussing in the way parents do when their hearts are still catching up with what they just witnessed. Then she glanced toward Mr. Ellis. "Thank you," she called out softly. "Really?" He waved it off lightly, the gesture humble, almost shy. "Morning's better with a bit of courage in it," he replied. She smiled at that, one of those warm, neighborly smiles that linger for an extra second. Then she guided the boy back toward their house, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. As they walked away, the street settled again, not quieter, just calmer, like a room after someone has turned off the music but left the warmth behind. Mr. Ellis leaned back in his chair. Toby climbed onto his foot, kneading once before curling into a snug circle. The breeze shifted, brushing through the maple leaves above him, carrying with it the faint scent of freshly cut grass from somewhere down the block. He let out a slow breath, not heavy, not tired, just peaceful. His eyes drifted along the street, the sidewalks he'd walked for decades, the houses he'd seen filled with families, hellos, goodbyes, and all the quiet moments in between. And he felt something he hadn't realized he'd been missing. A small sense of belonging, renewed by nothing more than a child's attempt to ride a bike, and the chance to witness it. Life didn't announce its gifts loudly. It left them gently on the porch, waiting for him to notice. The street eased into stillness again, as if the morning itself were taking a slow, satisfied breath. The boy and his mother disappeared around the corner. The sound of their laughter carried faintly on the breeze before drifting into silence. All that remained was the soft hum of the world returning to its gentle rhythm. Mr. Ellis stayed seated for a moment longer, his palms resting lightly on his knees. The air felt different now, not warmer, not cooler, just clearer, as though something inside the morning had shifted into place, a small gear turning softly in a much larger clock. Toby nudged his foot, then settled back down, content to share the quiet with him. The cat's steady purring rose and fell in a pattern that felt almost like breathing. Across the yard, sunlight slid a little higher, brushing the top of the porch rail with a faint glimmer. Dust motes drifted lazily through the air, catching the light in slow, unhurried spirals. The world was unremarkable in every way, and yet, Somehow, it felt full. Mr. Ellis leaned back, letting the wooden chair cradle him. His gaze wandered down the street, not searching, not expecting, simply remembering. The boy's small, wobbly triumph lingered in the air like a warm echo, and with it came something quieter, something that felt almost like the world offering him a hand. He thought of the ribbon on the bike, faded, worn, still holding its place, a small reminder tied to a child's handlebars, and to a feeling Mr. Ellis hadn't visited in a while, that gentle certainty that time may move us apart, but it also finds ways to bring small moments of connection back to us. He let that thought settle, let it soften, let it breathe. A memory rose, just a flicker at first. Maggie's laugh on that long-ago afternoon. Emily's tiny fingers gripping the handlebars of her first bike. The clumsy thrill of watching someone you love take a step toward their own courage. For a moment, those memories stood beside the morning, not heavy, not painful, simply present, like old friends stopping by to say hello before moving on. He wasn't sure when he had last felt such ease. Not joy, exactly. Not nostalgia. Something quieter than either. A gentle loosening in the chest, a small softening behind the ribs, a reminder that even after years of quiet routines, life still had new shapes of warmth to offer. He looked down at his hands, resting on the fabric of his sweater. They were older now, lined, steady, softened by time. But today, they didn't feel empty. They felt included, somehow, as if witnessing that small victory down the street had filled a space he hadn't known was waiting. The breeze picked up again, brushing the maple leaves overhead. One leaf detached and drifted in a slow arc toward the porch, landing near his shoe with a gentle whisper. He watched it settle, then smiled, a quiet, private smile that didn't need anyone else to understand it. Maybe that's how life worked now, he thought. Not with grand arrivals or sweeping changes, but with soft offerings tucked into ordinary mornings. A child learning to balance, a ribbon carrying someone's love across miles, a stranger finding himself unexpectedly part of a moment that wasn't his, yet somehow belonged to him anyway. Mr. Ellis lifted his mug, took the final cool sip, and placed it back onto the small wooden table. He exhaled slowly, letting his breath move into the open air. "Good morning," he murmured, to no one in particular, and to the day itself. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement, a small thank you, a reminder that he was still here, still part of things, still capable of feeling the world nudge him gently forward. He watched the sunlight stretch farther across the yard. Maybe, he thought, the heart doesn't grow quieter with age. Maybe it simply learns to hear the softer things. And with that quiet thought resting in him, he leaned back, letting the morning settle around him once more. Warm, tender, and softly alive.